Welcome to another Dystopian Legions battle report. Here we have the Kingdom of Britannia fighting the Prussian Empire on this Egyptian themed map. Starting with the Prussians, we have a unit of 6 Grenadier. The Veerling is not a Veerling, it's being used as a normal rifleman, and the Sergeant has been upgraded to have a rifle. Next to them is a battalion support of 2 heavy machine guns, and behind them is the Prussian lieutenant. Up the flank are 2 Teutonic Knights, and beside them is Oberst Hahl, aka Hammer Fist. And the far flank is another unit of 6 Grenadier. Also, the Veerling is being used as a normal rifleman, and the Sergeant has been upgraded to use a rifle instead of the pistol that he's shown with. On the other side, the British have a unit of 7 Line Infantry, specialists being used as a sergeant with a rifle. Amongst them they have Captain Smethington II. Further down their line, they have Colonel MacDonald. Beside them are 4 Sky Hussars with a specialist and a corporal. In front is the British lieutenant, and on their far flank is another 7 Line Infantry, also with a sergeant. Our objective is an ammo depot in the middle of the table. Alright, this is where we've deployed. See you at the end of turn 1. Here we are at the end of turn 1. The British won initiative and they gave the first go to the Prussians, in which the heavy machine guns ran into the crater here that we're counting as rubble. MacDonald scooted over his massive bath chair and he made a run action to behind these crates. And back on the Prussian side, the now shaken and fleeing Grenadier unit had made a run from their position, and they had actually attempted to get close to crossing the river, which was later in the turn repelled by Smethington activating his Line Infantry unit and them firing across the field, slaying 3 of the Grenadier models, and I chose to have them fall back since it would get them closer to the lieutenant, and they took a shake-in. On the other side of the field, the lieutenant here had moved before the Line Infantry unit, and the Line Infantry unit followed in suit afterward, which, just making a move action, used long range, and they attempted to fire at the heavy machine guns, getting 32 just to the first one with their whole unit. Their efforts failed as they didn't even roll a single success. Over with the Grenadiers on this side, they moved up to the crates and they made a long-range action against the lieutenant, and they caused a wound with 5 successes. Hahl, Hammer Fist, ran from his position closer to the Grenadiers Make sure he was within 2 inches of either the Teutonic Knights or the heavy machine guns. The Teutonic Knights had moved first, and they had made a run move up to get closer to their firing position. Lastly, the Hussars had made a fly move against the terrain. And that is all for turn 1. End of turn 2. To start off, the British took initiative again, and this time they went first with their lieutenant, and he activated with the line infantry to move them from the hill position behind the hard cover, and they fired across the battlefield into the heavy machine guns once again. They did not score. They only scored 3 successes. The injury rating is 4, so they failed to cause a wound. The knights who were next to them, I played Impervious on them, and they had taken on their activation through Hammer Fist, who activated with them, an Ein Zwei move, which gave them an additional 4 inches. So it gave them an 8-inch move to get in effective range to fire back on the line infantry, which killed 2 line infantry. With that on the side of the field, the Grenadiers here fired long range, and they failed to get, I think they only got 1 success, which isn't enough to slay an additional model. So they attempted, and they failed. Back on the other side of the field, Smethington took charge of the line infantry, and they ran from the position over here to get between me and the hard cover so that they would get cover in case I fired at them in the next round. With Colonel MacDonald, he also ran over the barrels and scooted his mighty bathtub over to support them with his abilities for his firepower. And the last thing on this side for the British, the original 4 Hussars had made a fly move from behind the statue to try to get behind this pillar based on where all my troops were positioned. He was trying to get it so no matter how the Teutonic Knights moved, they could not assist. So they made a fly, and back here, the main thing that happened was when the lieutenant activated, the lieutenant used a rally on this unit, which succeeded and took away their shaken marker. So on their turn, without moving, their activation, they used a focused fire, still being within range of the officer, and the focused fire failed, but they were able to still get 2 successes, 2 6s on blue dice, since they were in effective range, and kill one of the Hussars, wounding their firepower for the next turn. And that concludes turn 2. Here we are at the end of turn 3. The Hussars acted first. They made a jump move across the river and fired at the heavy machine guns, which they did not kill one of the heavy machine guns. They had only done a wound to it, which the Britannian player later in the turn was able to cause another wound, slaying the heavy machine gun nest. With 2 heavy machine guns at the time still being left, they fired back at the 3 Hussars, killing 2 of them. And the Hussar failed his morale since he was 18 inches under 50% on red dice. He needed 4 successes, which he didn't get 6s, so he failed and chose to flee his line. The Grenadiers here just shuffled up kind of behind the area terrain, and they fired at the Hussar, but they weren't able to do any additional wounds to him, trying to break him off. Main things for the line, Smethington just moved up. They fired at the heavy machine gun and they failed to do any wounds, but it was Mac acting alone with his blunderbuss that was able to slay the final wound in the heavy machine gun. He got 4 6s needing to break the heavy machine gun, which is a stroke of luck on his only 5 black dice for shooting long range with his blunderbuss. So there was a miracle moment there. On the other side of the field, my Teutonic Knights suffered a casualty from his line infantry, and they passed 2 successes minimum. I think he rolled a blue 6. He played a card that made it so they instantly got a shaken for suffering a life point, which he completely killed them on. That one Teutonic Knight was managed to roll 4 6s of his own with blue dice, and was able to kill 2 of the line infantry, which was my moment of 6s on that turn. So we both had rolls of 4 6s each, dealing a significant blow. Last for the Prussians, using Ein Zwei, the Grenadiers here moved from their cover, and they went over and attempted to shoot at the last Hussar, which they were still unable to slay him. They didn't get enough. They only got 2 successes, and I needed 3 just to wound him. Left their sergeant model. My last activations was Hammer Fist, running up the field for his position, and Lieutenant ran from her position, and she tried to get her command range to the heavy machine gun remaining and the Grenadiers. Stuck in the middle of the field. And that concludes turn 3.